2, 1. Hello, Brandon. How's it going?
It's going great.
Good.
Glad to be here.
I am glad you are here as well. Sorry, my camera's not properly. Let's hide the door. There we go. Hi, everybody who's watching. This is the second episode of the second season of my live stream show, Messy Desk. And I'm very excited to have Brandon Azbill with me. I've known Brandon for quite a few years now. I think we met, the first time we actually met was at Northwest Guitar Festival, right?
Yeah, I think it was in Portland actually. You came to Portland, and
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
I haven't played classical guitar a super long time, so that was sort of toward the beginning for me actually.
Yeah. Um, and then we were at the same festival a few times. We played in the finals together a couple of years ago. And then, yeah, we've sort of stayed in touch ever since. Just for everyone watching, just so everyone's aware, um, we're not having the normal donation links here, but we want to encourage anyone who wants to donate to um, the charity we've put in the description, which is working to end racially targeted police violence in America. So, I mean, I know you're a little closer to a lot of the events happening right now there, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of
Yep.
an intense situation.
Important time to donate, and it feels strange having content being released at this time, but I think just directing some of our attention to that is
Yeah.
a good way to offer some support.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I don't feel like I know a lot or enough to like speak about it, but I think, at least we can support organizations like this, which are trying to create some like policy change and change structures within the police system, which will hopefully make a difference. So anyone who's interested in helping with that can click the link in the description. But yeah, I know what you mean. It's a bit weird continuing to do stuff, although I don't know like how much stopping like music making and discussing and everything is really helping at this point, right? Better to do something positive, hopefully.
Yeah. It's
Um,
contributing any way we can.
yeah, for sure. So everyone, please check that out. We'll mention it again as people come into the stream. But yeah, so you and I have known each other for a while. But do you want to tell the audience a bit about you and what you do, like your sort of spark notes of who you are and your artistic profile at the moment?
Yeah, the way I say it now is I love music. I'm a person that loves music, and guitar is my primary instrument, and I have an eclectic background with that. So it's classical guitar is what I consider to be most comfortable on and play the most, but I like playing uh, acoustic guitars, arch tops, electric, all kinds of different genres. So I just love music in general. Right now, I'm doing a master's degree at Portland State, and I'm researching body mapping and injury prevention, and putting a lot of attention on understanding how awareness of our body movement impacts our technique and how that can save you from injury. In my case, I was pretty badly injured from overuse and misuse of my body. Just the things that you do when you're younger, like playing 8 hours a day, that was a pretty common thing for me. And if you keep up those kind of patterns, you're set for an injury. So the last year, I've really been spending all of my time with the instrument, relearning how to play, mapping out new technique, and trying to build safe and effective practice habits. And I just want to share as much as I can today with where I'm at with the guitar community and the music community in general, because I think a lot of these principles really just overlap with a lot of musicians. So, yeah.
Yeah, and there's the whole phenomenon too of people not wanting to talk about it because it's like, especially people who've gone through it, because there's kind of like a stigma, I guess, attached to it or whatever, which is kind of ridiculous because it's like yeah, I don't know. It's just if you want to improve your playing and your technique so that you don't continue to injure yourself, it's something positive to talk about. I don't know. I don't see how it reflects badly on people because so many of us do things we don't even realize with our bodies that could injure us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, everyone has a different threshold too, and it's an important thing to think about. Strength is a factor, physical size is another factor. So just because your teacher can do something, it doesn't mean that you can do that same thing. We all have different limitations.
Right.
And I think that's a nice outlet for body mapping where you're really going after how do I want to achieve this sound? What are the physical means for doing that? And you can create a technique that's more tailored to your instrument, the position that you're playing in, and just really work from what you have around you.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, we could get into that for a long time, but let's start with hearing you play a little bit, actually, because you said you've been as you've been recovering from the injury stuff, you've sort of been picking up some shorter pieces again, right? And are you gonna play the Johansson Prelude first?
Yeah, I'm gonna play a Portland composer, Brian Johansson, wrote a set of 24 preludes, and this is just a short, fun piece that I love playing, so I'll start off with that.
Yeah, and sorry, just really quickly, these preludes are really special for me too because I was studying in Vancouver when we met, and I had to play some of these as a set piece for the Northwest Festival one year. You did the same thing, I guess. But I knew about them before that because Michael Partington played them at a concert in Calgary when I was living there. And I use them with my students all the time. I think like really Brian's music is some of the most like amazing, maybe underheard in some parts of the world, classical guitar music. Like it's just incredibly written.
Yeah, Brian is really prolific, and he just keeps writing more and more. He's technically retired now, and what that means for him is he's just going to write as much music as he possibly can for the rest of his life, and it's really wonderful, some of the music he's putting out today as well.
Yeah, but it's really also just super well written, especially the preludes. Like every single prelude is beautiful, every single prelude is well thought out, and they all work well on the guitar. I mean, he is a guitarist, right? So, are you studying with him then right now?
Yeah, so my guitar teacher is Cameron O'Connor, and then my composition teacher is Brian Johansson, so I sort of have a pair that I'm working with. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Nice. Okay. Awesome. So which prelude were you playing?
Number 18.
Cool. Okay, I'm just going to hide my image here. And people in the chat, if you have questions for Brandon, don't hesitate to write them down. We'd love to hear from you. All righty. Let's hear some Johansson. Beautiful.
Yeah, fun little piece.
Yeah. Dun, diga, dun, diga, dun, diga, dun. I love how he uses slurs in all the preludes, actually.
Yeah, it's interesting. He, cause, slurring onto an open string sort of gives you an accent, and it's something that generally you would want to avoid doing, but he carefully places his slurs a lot of times onto the downbeat, which is really cool to see someone, like, that's one of the advantages to having a good guitarist as a composer, is they can really exploit some of these idiomatic qualities.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like all the textures in those preludes are so effective. I use number 5 a lot with my students, actually. Has that cool harmonics intro, which is like just challenging enough for a lot of students, but not like super out there. And
Hmm.
I also really like it because it just uses I can't remember what mode it's in, but it's simple. I think maybe Dorian mode.
I think
Simple.
I have.
It's like E major, D major, or E minor, D major. Anyways, the point is it shows them like these simple chords they already know how to play, but then you can sort of show them as you go through the piece that it's like using those chords, and it really helps them connect with like
It's
harmony.
it's funny, like with stuff like this, I like that you're teaching with it because sometimes doing source studies or whatever it might be to work on technique, and it depends how you're using it. It's not going to be as musically exciting a lot of times as some of the more modern composition that's happening because these are really attractive to me, and it's not super hard, and it's just a great way to have a real musical connection to it, but then also be able to focus on a technical
Hmm.
object as well.
Yeah, and I would say that the Johansson Preludes, like, I think they, I think they kind of, I mean, they certainly speak of like American or North American sort of like popular music to me, and I don't mean that in like a bad way. It sounds very like this. The musical integrity is really there, but they still show that he's influenced by popular music, rock music, folk music. Of sort of American, the North American continent. I think that's like actually important to point out. Like a lot of people, like a lot of students I've had who try them are like, oh yeah, I get this if they're not classical musicians, but then that you can still show them a lot of interesting techniques and things he's taking from his studies as a classical composer as well. So I think they're really great for that.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, with his background, he definitely has rock as part of his background. And I think a lot of, I don't know how it is everywhere with guitarists, but I think guitarists do tend to have an eclectic background with playing lots of different genres just
Yeah.
because the nature of guitar. And it's cool to be able to tie some of these elements together. And it,
Hmm.
it gives me a real connection to it because rock music was a big part of my childhood. So when someone else has that in their music, it really allows me to have a connection with it. Like when there's a piece of music that you can just close your eyes and think about the music, that's a good sign that you're connected to it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's the Folias folio that he wrote, right? Which is like super rocky Folias. It's really cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
I love that piece. Um,
there's
eh,
a moment in that piece where I can't even remember what it is. I actually don't know it, but it's like a lot of this sort of building
yeah,
sound, just two intervals, and that basically I think it's at like 2 minutes and 40 seconds on the recording, and I just go to that part and I listen to it back and forth.
yeah,
That's what I listen to out of that piece.
it's super cool. Yeah. Um, Yeah, awesome. So you're speaking a little bit of the injury prevention thing. So what kind of sort of what was your journey with that? How did that come about? If you want to go into a little more detail, since that's the topic of your
Yeah.
research. So
Hmm. So, do you want me to start with how I got injured, or?
sure, yeah. I mean, you were talking about it to me before the stream started. I didn't realize that I was actually giving you a good warning. I didn't think that deeply about it, but
Yeah, it's funny. So, uh, when I started,
moment, everybody. Sorry, Brandon, the audio's cut out. One moment, everybody.
with my right hand specifically, and I
Sorry,
think being in this situation, sort of
Brandon.
trying to play at a
Brandon,
high level,
sorry.
coming
The
this
audio
late in
cut
the
out.
game. Are you still? I think you're muted,
The
Michael. Are you?
the audio cut out for a second there. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Your mic
Can you
is
hear me?
muted.
No?
There we go.
Sorry, the audio cut out there. I don't know what happened. Something with my audio card happened. Can you speak?
Yep.
Okay, good. Everyone can hear you. Do you want to start again from the beginning?
Yeah. So I'll try and summarize it a little bit quicker. Coming to classical guitar at a later age in an academic setting, you have strict timelines and you have to play at specific levels. And due to this, when you're coming late to the game, you don't have much time to carefully embed good practice techniques. And this led to practicing for 6, 8 hours a day And I mean, that's a great sign of motivation, but it's just not a good plan for your health. And you know, maybe when you're 18 you can get away with this, or 19 or 20, or in my case, my health fell apart when I was about 23. Um, and it was after a string of performances and all this activity, I just got really bad tendonitis to the point where I couldn't extend my fingers, and opposition was really hard fretting notes. So it took quite a long time, about 3 months before I touched the guitar at this point. And then slowly this was a little over a year ago, slowly I've been coming back to it and really taking the time to build the secure technique, and evaluate sort of the classical guitar community's approach to technique, and then looking at Alexander technique, body mapping, and also going to the medical community for a lot of terminology. That's really helpful as well. Just to, like, we spend so much time with our instrument thinking about music, but we need to spend just as much time understanding our anatomy to learn how to control the instrument. And I mean, it's the same goes, like, there's the psychological component, there's the physiological component, and you have your instrument and the music. So it's important to really, especially the upper structures of your limb and your hand, to have a detailed understanding of the internal anatomy and then movement types. Where I've made the most progress personally is by understanding movements. And David Leisner has a lot of great things to say about macro movement, and a lot of times like more holistic movement, larger motions, and a lot of that didn't connect with me until more recently. In the last 3 months, since we've been in quarantine, I've had more time to play my instrument and more time to research. So getting into this, I started finding, you know, if I want to play louder, then it's best not to keep that from the wrist down. A lot of my conception of classical guitar playing has been sort of from the wrist down. Like, speed is a factor for volume, for sure, but force and larger movements can help. So, like, for example, the thumb, we can flex the thumb in, and we have a few joints here. And if we're just doing a free stroke, okay, let's keep that isolated. Maybe a rest stroke is a better example. So if I'm doing the rest stroke, it could simply come from the flexion of the thumb. But you can also extend the elbow into this to get more dynamic range. So combining some of the motions of the upper structures, like the elbow, and understanding all of the motions of the shoulder. I actually have some things that I can share on the screen. If
Yeah, do it.
Can you enable that?
Sorry. Zoom has new settings that don't allow screen sharing.
Sorry, I'll pull up my file while we're sorting that out.
Should be possible. Here, one more second. Is it allowing you to now?
Host disabled attendee screen
Oh,
share.
advanced sharing options. There we go. Got it.
Continue.
Should be possible now. Kevin Lowe says, "Hi guys, loving the conversation on Alexander technique, body mapping, and anatomy. Such an important topic that will always be relevant." Yes, agreed. Super relevant. Okay, I see a black screen at Brandon.
A black screen?
Oh, it's showing it in Zoom. It's showing it, but OBS is not picking this up. One moment. Let me see if I can. No, OBS is not picking this up properly, even though I can see it in Zoom. One moment. Nope, not this. There we go. Got it. Okay, everyone can see now.
Okay, awesome. So, for me, just this basic amount of anatomy, I'll try and zoom in a little bit. Just understanding where all the joints in your hand are, the carpal bones, and we'll go through some motion as well, but having an idea, radius on the thumb side, ulna on the pinky side, this is really important, and we'll save some of the upper structures for later. So what I'm going to go to is Wow, everything just disappeared on me. That's quite strange. Are some of the movement types here. So really, without looking directly at the anatomy, everyone can engage in these types of movement. So I'll just kind of go through a little bit of each of them, and then maybe I'm not sure if I should demonstrate some of this now or later, but we'll at least talk about some of the movement types. So flexion at the wrist is coming in, extension out, same with the fingers coming in.
Can you zoom in a bit more on the pictures?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see the
best way.
see the flexion and extension. Yeah. Yes, nice. That's good.
Cool. And the shoulder is one of the most complex areas, so I won't go through each of them. I'll send out maybe a shared drive folder or something afterwards where everyone
Yeah,
can
you can put it in the comments.
on their own time. Some of these are a little bit messy and older, but they're all very relevant. And I'm going to give maybe another screen share here to show how some of these apply to a musical passage. So let me stop that share.
Mm-hmm.
Add another.
People who have questions for Brandon, just put them in the chat. Okay.
So this is a teaching sequence that I just made for just a 2-octave C major scale to break down some of the movements that you would be making with each hand. So I'll just go through this one so you can kind of see how some of this applies. So with C major scale 2-octave, okay, so that's what we're working with. If you were to isolate the right hand and examine the movements, well, first off, if I'm playing this with rest stroke, I'm probably going to drop the wrist. So that
Can you show your hands so we can see what you're doing?
Is this better?
Oh, we can still only see the screen.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Okay. So I'll just do it without the example. But as you cross strings and alternate with rest stroke, in order to align the fingertips, dropping the wrist is something that there might be some health concerns, and this is usually the argument against playing in like a quote-unquote flamenco position and having the hand drop. But it's a truth that it aligns your fingertips. So I'm going to approach rest stroke in this way. All right, we have just the flexion of the fingers, and what's important to note with this is when you're crossing the strings, what the structures of your arm are doing. Because if you're just paying attention to this at a micro level from the wrist down, you're going to do all kinds of funky stuff with your technique. So sitting in a position that allows movement of the whole structure of your arm is really important. And as you cross from a string, you can notice, all right, well, my elbow is starting to extend. That's certainly one function. If you just allow the elbow to extend as you're crossing strings, you're not going to have a straight path. So if you want a straight path, maybe for timbral consistency, then you have to examine, well, what motion is actually making that happen to draw a straight line? So coming inward, that's adduction. So it's really important to think about this, at least include it in your awareness when you're building a scale, because if we wanted that specific timbre, or if you wanted to map the timbre, you should know what movement is causing you to go up and down, across, and all of what's comprised. So I'm going to share the screen again, and we'll take a little bit of a look at the right hand. So essentially, like, one takeaway that you could have from that with the more macro sense is that as you are ascending, the elbow flexes outward, and if you're keeping a straight line, the arm, the shoulder, is adducting inward. So those are two general things that you could keep in mind. And then as you're coming back, it would be the inverse of that. So you would have abduction followed by extension.
Okay. You're going to show the scale? Yeah.
Let's see if I can find my screen. Oh, living In a fun age of technology here.
Yes, super fun age of technology, exactly.
I can't even find my own screen. It's got to be here. There we go. Okay, so what I tried to map out, and what one of my instructors did for me, Cameron, is show me the difference between he has his own language, micro shifting, macro shifting, and what that might mean. So a micro shift, in this case, we'll start with that, happens at an upper position, which is just simply adduction. So you'll have a slight movement of the arm coming in when you do a micro shift, which is compressing.
Can you show us?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what you're saying always.
Yeah.
So this would be a micro shift. A full arm shift, or something more with the macro structures of your arm, when you're playing just a 2-octave C major scale, that's where it's happening.
Right.
So, and then shifting here, that's adduction. So if you do a full shift, you're kind of wasting energy here. Same again as you're coming back down. Right. Adduction across. These are simple things, but it's important to recognize these qualities in your music, and I think just compartmentalize the hand and the arm as sort of separate things, because a lot of maybe say like the technique that you might use on an electric guitar or something that doesn't require as much force, you could get away with playing free stroke all the time, and it's probably not going to affect your health. But when you play an acoustic instrument and you need a wide dynamic range solely from you and the instrument, I think it's really important to investigate how to produce that range of dynamics. So for me, what has helped me to prevent injury, especially playing something that has a larger dynamic range, is by understanding some of these macro movements, specifically with the right hand. So there's a lot of research already done in these areas, and it's just kind of trying to mend what isn't being said in one community to another, because I think that's a lot of the issue, is just a lack of communication. It's not that the information isn't there, but it's not always reaching its audience. My body mapping instructor is a piano player, and I have received so much help from her, and that's why I think a lot of these principles that come from body mapping, which is an offshoot of Alexander technique, which is basically... Are you familiar with body mapping?
I'm familiar with Alexander technique because Jonathan Leithwood came to UBC and was talking about it a whole bunch, because I know he's big on that. But do you want to just summarize both for the audience's sake?
Yeah, so Alexander technique is earlier, so I probably am not the best person to present the history of Alexander, but I believe he was an actor and a singer, and had issues with his voice, found ways of reconciling that. A lot of it has to do with understanding the way that our body was meant to move, and a lot of the things that we probably did as a kid, the way that we're set up to interact with the world, just like posture is such... I'll give an example. Like, I used to have a lot of this going on, so much slumping and leaning forward, and my shoulders hunched in. And one of the principles in Alexander technique is to lead with your head. So that's the furthest extension of your spine. So if you're going to bend over to grab something, don't go like this. Don't just collapse, because it's really... it's even bad for your organs, but lead with your spine and come forward. And if you do this, you're going to find that if you have injuries, like I have a back injury, it's really helpful as you're going around. If you're on the bus, just making sure that your posture is set is so helpful. I had nerve issues all throughout my arm just from hunching over, like typing on the computer and keeping your shoulders hunched in, doing any of these things for prolonged periods of time. Your fascia can actually form in misshaped positions. So, for example, I'll give like I used to play where this right arm was super far out with my position like this all the time, and the neck angle was actually angled backward, and
Oh yeah, I remember seeing a bit of
so
that.
in a lot of this like just narrowing right in on the fretboard, and it's like when I was at a neutral position, if I sat up, my head would just naturally turn to the left
Oh
because
man.
I'd been sitting in this position so long, and my shoulders are out of line. I don't actually think I have them. Oh, I do. I'll show you a cool trick that my body mapping instructor. I know I'm going on a tangent
No, no,
here,
no. This is great. I
but
mean, I'm super curious about this.
so these are great to just stuff under your arms. It's part of uh, a pool noodle. You can use a full pool noodle, or if you want a traveling pool noodle, I just like to chop them up into little bits and
Hmm.
stick it under your arms, and it shows you how your arm should actually be hanging. And when you're playing guitar, if you come from this position, it allows all the structures of your shoulder and the lower structures of your hands to be more in an optimal position.
Huh.
So this is a good starting place, and I, I never quite agreed with it or understood some of like the motions where you see people putting their elbow out. I always thought that was a red flag if you saw someone do this. But
Hmm.
if you just think, what is um, abducting the arm do? Like, what function do we have if we abduct the arm? Well, that's a great position when you're playing uh, on the upper frets here.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the best ways to apply pressure. So, saying that something like that is wrong, it's not a good way to conceptualize technique. I think it's better to start with what movements can our body make, and then which is
Healthily, right?
yeah, healthfully, like, and like what are we trying to achieve, and start there. Like, eh, I don't know, just for me personally, when I teach, I really try to teach awareness just because of my own circumstance.
Yeah.
But
I
I
mean,
think
I
it's really
I think like with students, like the amount of times, like for even just switching two basic chords in like a pop song or something, or any song like a Giuliani arpeggio, whatever. Um, Showing students the movements their wrist has to make and their arm has to make to switch chords is like usually a eureka moment for them. And like, I don't know, I feel like half the time when I do that in the first like few months of lessons or a few weeks or whatever, they kind of like suddenly realize that it's not just their fingers playing. They're like, oh my gosh, my whole arm is like part of this activity, you know? And of course there are many like switches and many technical things that they have to execute, which once they're aware of how the arm and the shoulder and the wrist moves, it just completely changes their ability to execute them, right?
yeah, I completely agree. Um, let's see.
But I mean, it's not intuitive because we think so much about the fret we're going to or the rhythm or the, which string we're supposed to play. We don't think like what's our whole body doing in that moment.
Mhm. I suppose another element from body mapping that's just, I mean, it's also in Alexander technique is awareness and kinesthetic awareness in particular.
Hmm.
Uh, just like your ability to feel. There's a lot of sort of like three sensations lumped up in kinesthetic, and uh, mostly what I'm talking about is understanding your position in space. So, like, helping, one thing that helps me is closing my eyes. And if you can really visualize your anatomy, you can go into that sort of frame of mind. In my case, I really have to pay more attention to that than maybe some musical elements sometimes, just to avoid hurting myself. But I think, if someone is trained properly from the start, and this is just an item that they're aware of, that's really the best way to, teach a student.
Yeah, because I mean, the problem is that every student's different and every body's different. So you can't really just teach them a bunch of rules that'll work.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, awareness is key. Kevin Lowe, who is going to be on the show later this month, actually, said Alexander had so much tension in his system that he lost his voice, but only when he was speaking on stage. When he sought medical advice, they said that there was nothing wrong with him physically, so he actually created his process by paying attention to every single movement. Yeah, awareness. He made in front of a mirror, trying to catch his habits before they came into action. Yeah.
That's better than me. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
Ross Chiasson, who made my guitar, actually. Ross says Alexander Technique has a lot of great ideas, but the source material reads like a man being paid by the word. Dude was pretty verbose. Have you read any of the source material?
just a little bit of it. I mean, mostly my attention has been with body mapping, just because it's tailored specifically to musicians.
Okay, yeah.
Uh, there's actually a Portland author that has several uh, books. This one, What Every Musician Needs to Know About the Body, is
Huh.
just a lot of simple illustrations, uh, and but just extremely important contents. Like, it's not going to take very long to get through this book, uh, but I would recommend
Who's
that
the author?
any uh, Barbara Conable, and yeah,
Cool.
designing Benjamin Conable. But yeah, this is sort of where the body mapping community starts in some sense. There's a few of them. Um, this is what I've mostly read on Alexander Technique. So these are good books. I actually have been compiling a list this morning of recommendations for awareness of body movement and just other helpful technical guides that have helped me recover. So I'll make sure to share that as well.
Cool. And how is the recovery going for you? Like, are you finding you can play pretty pain-free, or?
Yeah, I mean, I was originally doing my master's in performance, and I switched out because what I realized is that it's in order to build quality technique, you really need to be sensitive with your body and do things the right way, regardless of how much time that's going to take.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not in a place where I can concertize. It's not that I couldn't play for an hour straight, but the process of getting high quality concert music uh, to an
Yeah.
hour of high quality concert music, what that entails is a whole nother thing. And if I were to go back into practicing large volumes like that, I would be right where I started. So what's great now is I have been able to open up most repertoire, but I just have limited time frames where I can do certain things. It's like, if I'm going to do a tremolo, I know that that's about 3 minutes and no more tremolo for the rest of the day, or do it slowly. Like, certain movements, you have to start becoming aware of this. This is another cool thing to think about, is self-assessment. My body mapping teacher was a nurse originally, so what she would have me do when I was really in bad shape is self-assess. So for one, like, sit in front of a mirror so you can watch your posture. That's really helpful to see if, like, a shoulder's out of line, or if you're doing anything that's visually
Mm-hmm.
obvious that would impair your physical health. But self-assessing, like, right now I have a little bit of soreness in my pinky, so I'm very, very aware of that. And if we did a scale of 1 to 10, like right now I would say it's a 2. So I'm okay to play, but say it made it to a 4 after I played a piece of music, I know I need to slow down and pay attention and rest with that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have issues, especially with tendinitis, which is my main issue, um, it's it's not actually the right decision to completely stop playing. I can lightly use your hands, because I went a 3-month stretch without playing any guitar at all, and I noticed after a week of playing, once I finally came back to it lightly, my hands started recovering much faster. So I think movement and careful attention to the movement, if you do have some issues, I mean, it's going to be different for everyone. Go to a doctor. I certainly went to several doctors to see what was going on with my hands before I did anything. So seek some medical and professional help if you are having issues. But then afterwards, as you're working through a recovery, if someone does have an injury, I think self-assessment is a really helpful tool to just gauge where your physical health is, and to make sure that you don't continue using something that's progressively getting worse, because that's where you lead to an injury.
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that you mentioned starting late, because I also, like you, started quite late. I think I started guitar when I was 19, classical guitar when I was like 20. And it's like overwhelming when I think maybe when you start as a kid and a teenager, you don't realize like how crazy it is to try to catch up on all that rep, especially if you want to do like a bachelor's or a master's, like you're saying, to get like get to the stage where you play a master's level recital in like 5 years of playing guitar. There's a lot of potential for hurting yourself there, you know? Like I kind of get that a little bit. I mean, I had in my undergrad, I had some time where I had some injuries start to develop. First was the back and the sciatic nerve. Actually, I couldn't stand for a little while because my sciatic nerve was going nuts. And then I stopped using a footstool and started using a guitar support, which is like, duh, I'm like 2 meters tall. I should have done that like from day one. But anyways, so that was solved. But then I also had some left hand issues because I was playing Villa-Lobos etudes. Like 3 years after learning to play guitar, I was playing Villa-Lobos etudes, and that was like a bad idea. Because, you know, like Etude 11, that like, I mean, I have big hands, but still, for someone who like wasn't playing guitar for that long, the extensions that I was doing were like too much for my hand. And even this last year, I was playing the 18th Tedesco Capriccio, and there's just some passages in that are just like, for the left hand, just monstrous. Well, yeah, the sleep of reason produces monsters. But yeah, so there was definitely a time leading up to my exam in January where I'd started to get some like soreness and stuff, and I realized like the exam was in a week, so I was like, I can play this for my exam, but then I didn't program it again for a while for concerts or anything, because I was like, I was drilling it so much to work on the exam, but I knew like if I come back to this piece, it has to be within a context where the program doesn't have that many other heavy pieces, where like a lot of the other pieces are not heavy on the left hand, and I know that I can balance and manage it. So trying to self-assess that way, because yeah. It's easy to have the mentality of just pushing yourself, and that doesn't necessarily pay off as a musician.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually remembering a few other things. One of them, like, another important factor is positioning and seat height and all of this. And when I was thinking about this, I remember we played at, I think it was in Spokane when this happened. We played in the same competition, and you, I think, came on after me, and I had the height really low, just super low. You're much taller than me, and you played your whole set with just this.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was like too nervous. I forgot to adjust the chair, so I was just like. It worked out though. I did okay, but yeah.
I have a cool trick for this. I'm just sitting in a regular fold-up chair right now, but I refuse to sit on the wrong height.
Yeah.
So right now I've got some books on making guitar and a bicycle repair manual that I sit
Nice.
on. Just the right height.
I've actually been practicing on a rolling chair recently that I can adjust the height. It doesn't have any arms, of course, but yeah, it's actually really nice to just be able to adjust the height when I feel like my posture needs help or I feel like I'm too low or too high. It's good. Yeah. Yeah, body awareness, it's important. Okay, well, I think we've covered that topic pretty thoroughly. But I mean, I'm really glad that you're doing that research and just taking the time to, do the thing you have to do. And I think the other thing, like I don't know if this is really like, maybe you've thought this or not, but I have the feeling that too many guitarists just want to play big, long, heavy pieces because that's what we think is cool or something. And I don't even know if that's like beyond the physical limitations. I don't know if that's like artistically that great for the community and for the instrument. Like there's so much good music that nobody plays because it's just not seen as like virtuosic enough,
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. Maybe more people having some limitations and having to pick a different program might be good for the whole guitar community. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really fascinating topic too. I've had to think about this quite a lot, like what I'm trying to do with my music. When you can't play guitar for a long period of time and you can't perform, you start asking yourself, why am I doing this? And
Yeah.
that happened for me as I decided, I want to, even though I haven't had much training in composition, that's something that I want to spend more time with.
Yeah. Oh, we'll talk about that soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
I have before we get onto your compositions and that topic, I have the gotcha question of the stream.
No.
Do you know what the gotcha question is?
No, I don't know what this is.
How do you define classical guitar?
Ooh. I've heard other people refer to it as a concert guitar, but gosh, that's a hard question.
What's the difference between concert guitar and, I mean, like okay, I don't know. That seems like a weird definition.
Yeah, I kind of like the term of like concert guitar because it's something that is self-supportive, and it sort of feels like solo piano to me of the different types of iterations of guitar that we have. Classical guitar is a fairly polyphonic instrument in comparison to the others. So I sort of, I don't know. I don't know how I would define classical guitar. I mean, we definitely have a longer tradition with it.
Hmm.
Gosh, how would you define classical
Oh,
guitar?
you're turning this on me. I'm supposed to ask the impossible question of all the guests. Come on.
You said I
Um,
could be friends.
yeah, yeah, I did say you could ask me questions. Um, I mean, I don't know. I think that, like, obviously I think there's a few components to it, right? Like, there's not a clear definition, but I think there's a physical component of the instrument, which is like, you know, wood, nylon strings, or carbon, but those type of strings. Um, Usually six, but can be more strings. And then there's the repertoire, which is problematic because you can say classical music, but when it comes to contemporary classical music, that's a tricky definition in and of itself, just in the sense of like, what do you count as contemporary classical and not? There are some parts on the borders where the definition breaks down. But the bigger issue with the repertoire is that if you say classical music on the guitar, the average person who you're trying to describe it to, who doesn't know what it is, who needs to understand what it is, it does not help. Like, they think you mean playing like Beethoven and Mozart on the guitar, which we do have our 19th century repertoire, but it's just very hard to like give the correct impression by saying that. And then there's of course the technical stuff, like we play with nails, we play with our fingers, and polyphonic music. I mean, I guess polyphonic classical music played on a nylon string guitar would be the best definition I could think of, but that has problems with it, so it's not perfect.
Well,
And
even
it's not
like
always polyphonic either, I guess. Depends on the piece, but
yeah,
yeah.
I think maybe the classical part of it is maybe more the relationship between performer composer, and I know these
Yeah.
lines definitely get blended, but one thing going into it that I noticed for sure is I felt very creatively stifled when I first went into it, and I stopped composing music or doing things for about a 2 year period where I was just focusing on playing other people's music, and it's really just the act of trying to bring as much beauty and excellence and intention to a specific piece of music. Like you take this whatever you've decided to learn and just go through every element of musicianship with it and try and bring that up and hopefully have a purpose with that
Hmm.
as well, a meaning for why you're doing this. And it
Hmm.
could be that, you just want to play, like we were talking about with some of these long, really virtuosic pieces of music. Maybe what you're trying to share is just excellence through playing really extremely, like, difficult virtuosic music. That takes so much work to do something like that. And I think
Hmm.
that is an element, not always of classical performance, but I think it's the composer performer relationship is definitely something that has historically been around, and it's definitely an active component to
Well,
that.
and I think that classical guitar maybe is unique, not entirely unique, but mostly it's pretty unique in the sense that you get to hear composers express their ideas on the instrument who don't play it. That's not to say that guitarist composers aren't great. I mean, we were just talking about Brian Johansson. The reason the Brian Johansson Preludes are amazing is because he is a guitarist. That's one of the reasons that makes them so special, right? But by the same token, the reason the Tedesco Preludes and Fugues for two guitars are so special is because he was not a guitarist, but he can express amazing musical ideas on the guitar,
Yeah.
because there are classical guitarists who will play his music. Whereas fingerstyle guitar, you don't really, I mean, maybe it exists, but you don't really see like composers writing for fingerstyle guitar who are not guitarists. So the repertoire is just different in that sense too. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's maybe one unique component, sort of.
Yeah. I wish that there was, for me personally, I really want to integrate electric guitar playing into my concertizing when I get back to it and
Hmm.
develop that, because there's so many sonic possibilities that we just simply don't
Yeah.
have
Yeah. Yeah.
with the classical guitar. I just started using pedals again since the first time in, I don't know, 10 years or something, and I'm fascinated. Like, octave pedals are crazy. Some of the things that the ways you can manipulate sound. It's not with your body that you're always directly approaching this. You can stomp on
Hmm.
something, change the sound. But for a composer, it's really amazing, the landscape and like.
For sure, yeah. I mean, electric guitar is pretty important in new music, chamber music, and new music. You know, it's. Ross Chesson is saying, try some hypotheticals to figure out what it is. If David Russell shows up with a steel string and plays Beatles medleys, is it a classical guitar? I mean, maybe. Again, it depends who you ask. You know. I don't know. Also, Brent Crawford says, appreciating the wide variety of composers' pieces I'm getting introduced to here. Always a ton of interesting content. Thanks, Brent. I saw your concert for Daniel Ramjtan's concert for the End of Time thing. It was great. Brent played an amazing live stream concert. And people should check out Daniel Ramjtan's show. It's on Twitch, I think. Concerts for the End of Time, it's called. It's a really good live stream series. Anyways, okay, now that we've solved what classical guitar is, Brandon, once and for all, we figured it out. We are going to play the classical guitar repertoire listening test. Are you ready?
I am not ready. I have not prepared, and I don't listen to that much classical guitar, so I'm in for it.
It's going to be good. So this is the segment of the show where I play clips of recordings of classical guitar music, and the guest has to guess the piece, the composer, and the player. So there's 3 total points you could get out of 3, like any amount out of 3. I'll give you some hints, especially for the player, because it's like kind of hard otherwise. And you have 1 lifeline. You can ask the audience for help in 1 point. So everyone who's watching, if you want to help out Brandon, and you guys are free to guess along too. So if people in the chat want to try and guess, you know, feel free. Okay, so I have a beginner, intermediate, and advanced category. We're going to start with the beginner category. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Andrew York. Very good. See, I told you it'd be easy, the beginner category.
Now it's like, why is it that I don't know the name of...
You don't know this tune?
Oh, it's Home. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's Home.
Yeah, I should...
His newest album is titled Home.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And who's the player?
I did Andrew York.
Yes, it's Andrew York playing Andrew York. Very good. See, that was a softball one.
That was...
Andrew York playing Andrew York. Home. 3 out of 3. Very good, Brandon. 10 out of 10. Or, well, 3 out of 3, actually. Okay, number 2. Oh, Spotify and their ads. Jeez. Okay, wait. Do you want to hear a later section? Okay, I'll go to a later section.
Sure. I mean, I have an idea of a player, maybe, but... So, it's definitely an like a early 20th century type of player. It sounds like. Is this a Segovia recording?
Yeah, it's a Segovia recording.
Okay.
Very good.
That sounded like Segovia.
Yeah.
I don't know why it is that I don't know this. Like, I very much have an oral memory of this entire piece.
Can you guess the composer at least? Just guess, like, based on. I'll give you a few guesses.
Oh, is it like maybe Ponce?
No, not Ponce. Nope. Much earlier than that.
All right.
Kevin Lowe, you got the composer right, but the piece wrong. Kevin.
Who's the composer?
Just guess. Two more guesses for the composer.
Oh, okay. It's earlier than Ponce.
Much earlier, I would say.
Oh, why is it's not coming to mind?
Kevin, how did you not get the piece? I'm shocked. J. Marquez Diaz Canedo has it in the chat.
Why don't you just read it?
You don't want to guess. You don't want to guess. Okay, it's Fernando Sor.
Jeez, how is it that I don't know that score?
It's okay, no worries. Do you know the piece, or do you want me to just tell you?
Yeah, go for it.
It's the Grand Solo.
Okay, That's what
Yes.
was about to come out of my mouth. I could have got an extra point.
You could have. Yeah, you should just got to guess, man. No, there's no shame in getting the wrong guess as long as you try. Okay, so 1 out of 3 because you got Segovia playing immediately.
Kevin got one of the other points.
Okay, next piece.
It's Takamitsu.
Huh?
Takamitsu, right?
No,
wait,
no.
no. I've heard this piece so many times. This is why did I say that?
It's okay, no worries. You get another try.
I mean, I know it's based on John Dallin, right?
No, actually.
What am I thinking?
Here, I'll play a later section.
My friend Adam played this.
Any idea?
Oh yeah, I just have to remember the composer. It's not a guitar composer.
No, it is a guitar composer.
It is a guitar.
Yeah. Kevin Lowe says, sorry, I know the piece. I just didn't remember the name. It's okay, Kevin. I'll forgive you. But I'm going to make your listening test hard when you come on the show. Ross, wrong piece but right composer. And Kevin's got the piece this time and the composer for this one.
Is this Britain? I mean, that's what
No,
I was
no,
thinking.
no.
Nocturnal, that's not right.
No.
Okay,
It's,
what did you play?
It's Cuban composer.
Oh. As I face public humiliation.
No, it's okay. It's Brouwer.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yep.
And it's, do you know which piece?
No.
Okay, it's the sonata.
Okay.
Played
Yeah,
by you might know this player though. He teaches in the Northwest.
Oh. Do I personally know him?
Probably, yeah. I mean, we've been at the same festival as him.
Is it Mike?
Michael Partington, correct? Yes.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Up to 5 points here.
Yes, Michael Partington playing the Brouwer Sonata. It's a really good CD. He has some great CDs of 20th century guitar music.
Yeah,
Really
it's
cool.
funny. It's like that's what happens. The way I associate that is one of my friends played that for their recital. You know,
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like going through the composers that I can remember.
It's funny because I mean I feel like you play so much like really contemporary music. This is like not even that contemporary compared to some of the stuff I've heard you play. It's funny. Okay. Next one. You ready?
There's more. Okay.
Do you know?
It's funny. That sounds like Brian Johansson to me. Like some of the lower lines.
Yeah.
But I don't.
It's
I mean,
not
it's-
him, but I can see why you would say that. It's a Brazilian composer,
Oh, okay.
contemporary, like Johansson.
Oh. Living.
Yes, definitely living. Actually, I feel like this is giving away too much, but I played this piece.
Okay. I mean, is it another? You said Cuban. Is that what you said?
No, Brazilian.
Brazilian.
Yeah.
Is it? I mean, is. I'm trying to think. Who is?
I played some of this composer's music in Northwest Festival,
Oh no.
which we were at. Do you even remember what I played, Brandon? We played in the same finals round. You don't remember what I played? Shame. Just kidding. It's Sergio Assad.
Okay, I was gonna. You know what? I just need to open my mouth.
You just need
So
to guess. Okay, if you, yeah.
close any other time until you ask me a question.
It's Sergio Assad. Do you know this piece though? I don't think I played this movement in the competition. I think I played other movements because this movement's fucking hard. I played this movement in concerts, but I was like, I'm not going to play in a competition because I'll just die, you know.
Did Thomas Biloteau record this?
Yes, it's Thomas Biloteau, correct.
Ah, hey, I got something right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
See,
nice
you just have to
surprise.
guess. Your guesses are good. You just have to go with your intuition. That's the thing.
Sergio Assad. I don't remember the piece. I've heard him. I don't remember the name of it. It's Sweet Brasilia.
Yeah, Brasileira, number 3. Yes, correct.
Brasilia. Okay.
So you, 2 out of 3 for Thomas and the piece. Nice. Okay, next one in the intermediate category. Any idea?
I don't know. That's really beautiful. I've never heard it before.
Oh, really? Oh, God. I played this piece last year. Not that you'd know that, but I mean, I played it in school. It's a really beautiful piece, especially this section. Okay, your hint is this is an Italian composer from the 20th century.
Is it? I don't actually know what Tedesco is. Tedesco?
Yeah, Tedesco's Italian.
Okay, yeah. So Tedesco is it?
Yes,
Tedesco?
it's Tedesco. Very nice.
All right, I was like, oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
I know you like Tedesco. Okay.
And this is a very currently like famous younger-ish player who's also Italian.
Oh.
Yes, Kevin, it is Tedesco. Correct.
Matteo Mela or
No, a little younger than that actually, I think.
Oh.
But was recently in the GFA a few times, that kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
Not that long ago.
Oh dear, yeah. It's like Andrea,
Andrea
yeah.
De Vitis. Yes.
Yes.
Andrea De Vitis. Very good. Okay, do you know the piece or am I just going to tell you?
I don't know.
It's the 12th Capriccio de Goya, No Hubo Remedio.
You know, I haven't spent much time with those. I love the 24 Prelude and Fugues. I just like that. I've listened to those all year. They're so wonderful.
So good, yeah. The Capriccios de Goya are really nice. Ross Johansson De Vitis, exactly. But if you want to... Oh, are you there? Oh, you just cut out for a second. If you want to injure yourself again, you should play these pieces. Because they're really hard. Really brutal on the left hand.
Don't encourage me. You have no
Yeah.
idea.
They're not really playable. Like there's a lot of stuff you have to cut, but they're really beautiful even when you cut notes. Okay, very good. So 2 out of 3 for that one. And then the next one, here we go.
Well, now we've got Brian.
See, it's funny. Nobody else would know this.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, a Magic Serenade.
Magic Serenade by Brian Johansson. Yes.
And I'm trying to. Is it him playing? I mean, I can't tell.
No, it's not him. It's not him playing. I'll go to a bit on. Any idea?
I'm trying to think who's recorded this. That sounds pretty live.
It's a live recording, yeah.
Are you playing a live recording, like a video?
Yeah.
Is it? Is this one of my teachers?
Possibly.
Is it Jesse?
It's Jesse McCann.
Jesse
Yeah.
McCann, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I'll be damned if I don't find a recording of Jesse to play on this stream for you.
I'm happy that you played it.
Yeah.
Jesse McCann is he directs the guitar studies at Portland State University. He's a really cool guy.
Yeah, he's great. And he has a cool podcast also, the Tactical Guitarist, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really cool thing to check out. I mean, like he's got wonderful guests at this point. So anyone who has heard of the Tactical Guitarist podcast. Should check that out. There's a lot of great information for free there as well.
Yeah, he's great. I like Jesse a lot. He was directing the festival the year it was at Portland, right? Like, yeah. Yes, that's where I remember meeting him. Nice. Okay, next one. We're in the advanced category. You actually did better in the intermediate than the advanced, Brandon.
Oh, then the advanced?
Sorry, you did better in the intermediate than the beginner. Weirdly enough. Okay, next one. Any idea?
I mean, just the texture of it. Is it Giuliani? I mean, it kind of sounds...
It's not Giuliani, but you're in the right neighborhood. Oh, Simon Farintosh gets it right out the go. Hi, Simon. This is like a reunion of the Northwest Guitar Fest. We're just missing... who is the guy who got third that year? Who was also in the finals of this? A guy from Vancouver. I should know his name, but I never met him before that. He was studying with a different teacher.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I didn't really meet him, actually. I feel like he didn't hang out at any of the events. Anyways, but other than that, we've got the whole finals of that year here. Hi, Simon.
Hi, Simon.
The fact that you guessed that so fast, Simon, I'm just going to make your test even harder when you're on the show in a month or two.
No. I'm not sure. Is it... How many questions can
I you can guess for a little bit. You're in the right neighborhood with Giuliani, but it's not Giuliani. A little bit later than Giuliani, but still.
Is it romantic period then?
Yeah. But like a little bit more developed romantic than Giuliani, you know. Not that Giuliani's not developed, but just that, you know, the style had developed more by that point.
Yeah, you can hear that. I don't know. I feel like Simon should get the points for this one.
No, but this is your show. You have to keep guessing. Come on.
All right.
Uragandi, yes, is Uragandi.
Yeah.
Yes, and which type of piece is it? Do you know?
Is this one of the etudes?
It's one of the etudes. Very good. I'll give you the point because you guessed etude. Yes. And the player is an American player who teaches at a pretty important institution. And I can't remember what the institution is, but I know that they teach there, this teacher. This player.
Okay.
Any idea?
Is the first name Mark?
Nope. Not Mark Teicholz. No. It's David Serabin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, that makes sense. I've listened to some of those recordings. That instrument. I don't know if that was a modern instrument.
I think it's a 19th century guitar. It must be.
Sounded like it.
Okay, 2 out of 3 for Uragandi Etude. Okay, next one. You ready? Any idea?
It sounds like Dean's.
No, not Dean's.
Oh.
Another try. But, I mean, it is a contemporary composer. Sorry? Balkan composer?
Oh, Bogdanovich?
Yes, it's Bogdanovich. Do you know the player or the piece?
I don't think I've listened to enough Bogdanovich to know who's recorded his music, so I'm just going to forfeit the last two there.
Okay, it's the third sonata played by Javier Jara.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
One of the more recent and American GFA winners. Okay, so that was 1 out of 3 for Bogdanovich. And the last one, you ready?
I'm ready.
I'll play a later section also. Any idea?
I don't believe I've heard that. But
Okay. It's
you will probably tell me who it is, and then I'll know.
it's Music of Memory by Nicholas Ma.
Ah, okay.
Do you know
I have heard. It's been years since I've heard that.
do you know the player?
I know.
Sorry?
I remember watching Thomas record this, but it doesn't sound like him.
No, it's not Thomas. But
That's
yes, he does play this piece also. Sorry?
I don't recognize the player.
It's Marcin Dila.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Jose Cueto got Javier Jar for the last one. Nice job. Okay. So, in the beginner category, Brandon, you got 5 out of 9. Intermediate, you got 7 out of 9. And then advanced, you got 3 out of 9. So not too bad.
All right. I was expecting it to be like flat 0.
No, you did better than you thought. Your intuitions were good.
All right, sweet.
Yes.
Well,
Nice. Well, let's listen to some more music. Do you want us to play the video of your composition, or do you want to play something live again?
I'll play something live. My hands
Okay.
are feeling good right now, so it's a good time.
What are you gonna play for us?
I'm gonna play a composition of mine. It's called Flow. This was the result of at one summer sitting in my room playing guitar for about 100 hours, coming up with this. So
Okay.
it shouldn't take that long to write this piece, but
But it did. Kevin Lowe says, "Damn, this particular quiz is hard. I'm starting to realize how little I listen to guitar music nowadays. Damn." Well, Kevin, you're going to be on the show in a few short weeks, so you better start studying now. Just
or
kidding.
you can be like me and not study at all.
I try to pick the quiz like based on what I think the guest will know, like / plays, you know. So like for example, the Johansson thing, nobody else would get. I would never put that on someone else's test. That was for Brandon, you know.
I appreciate it. You're inflating my score.
No, I mean it's not fun to give stuff to someone that they've never heard or never played or wouldn't know. It's just like there's no point. Okay, so you're gonna play this piece that you wrote, and then we'll talk about your compositions after.
All right.
Okay, I'm just gonna turn my mic off and let you play here. Cool. Very nice. Awesome.
That's-
Lots of slurs to deal with.
yeah, especially at the end. Oh my gosh, I was reworking that passage recently, and it was such a disaster before. I can like, that's something interesting to talk about with more macro movement because I was just realizing how much it helps to include the macro movement, especially with like, let's see, with the last bit of the slur, just pulling the elbow slightly in, and then it's accurate each time. Because if I just try and do it with the hand, it's still effective. But if you're just gonna run straight through it, having the the other structures of your arm support that, it makes it secure for me. I don't know. How much do you think about that?
Probably not enough. I mean, now as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about all these passages in the Chaconne where I'm doing all these slurs because it's how Carlo arranged it, and I'm like, probably would help to do some macro movement. Um, yeah,
Slurring in Bach. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's a
yeah,
fun thing to do. It makes it sound beautiful, but it's quite the tax on the left hand.
yeah. There's just a lot of like those passages in the Chaconne where the bow markings in the violin part, um, if you follow them and you try and make everything legato, like the problem is we can't really give. I mean, this is the frustrating thing about playing violin music is we can't really do like a single bow stroke like they do. Um, it's not really possible, but you can give the illusion of it. It's just hard when you cross the string, not to make the grouping obvious.
Yeah.
And some of those slurs in that 30-second note passage or 30-second note, section in the Chaconne, some of those slurs, like, you kind of have to group them in a way that's makes sense musically, but then it's really quite hard on the left hand. Not hard in the sense of like strain, but just nailing them.
Yeah.
So
Bach is something that has continually injured me, and just last week I finally got, just from the PFA, the Allegro, I've been it's not even that hard of a piece, but just understanding how to use your hand to cross strings and to play things musically and do that safely. It's especially with the compression of octaves and trying to get voices to come out that are just adjacent to each other. Like, how do
yeah.
you get your technique to reflect that? I mean, if you want to talk about that, I learned so much from my teacher with Bach interpretation. It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, bringing out the voices is a real challenge. How do you find that it interacts with the need to observe your movements and like be aware of what your hands are doing? What's the result there?
Yeah, gonna see if I can have my music nearby. Yeah, it's right over here. So, like you were talking about, one of the ways that you could do a slur is by crossing a string. That's one way that you can make legato lines, and then slurring also an actual slur that creates legato. So just like having that in mind when you start, and then thinking about how you want to shape something, like those are two important principles just going through that really helped me with interpreting this music and making it musical. But for example, like if you had two close voices, some of the separation, like with adjacent strings, if you try with P and I, it's just not strong enough to get it to come out. So if you're gonna play two adjacent strings, P and M, at least in my case, allows for a more full movement, especially if you move the whole hand to get those upper voices to come out. That's one that was really important. Let's see. Also, speed is such a huge factor when you're dealing with free stroke. Like, I think force and preparation and loading strings with rest stroke, that's definitely where a lot of the volume can come from. And front loading a string, but you can do that with free stroke as well. But what I find in this piece is if I just make sure that the angle of my wrist is just slightly arched to where it's angling the fingertips inward, and then I focus on full movements with speed, that's how I get the voices to come out in this. And that's kind of what opened up free stroke and a dynamic range, is thinking about full motion, making sure that you're moving tendons that are connected together. Like, for example, the wrist positioning is really important with this. That's another takeaway that I got from it. Like, um, the way that my teacher Cameron was playing guitar was foreign to me. Like, I didn't quite understand how or why you would cross M and I, uh, you know, ascending, or how that was possible. That's a dropped wrist position. If you want to play, like, for example, an arpeggio, I'll just do like an E major here and have I out front. That's because your wrist is dropped. If you do it with a more aligned wrist, you can get it, but it's not quite there. And if you're doing scales and you want to cross M I, this helps with all of the upper melody, understanding how those cross. I don't know. Is that something that was taught to you? Like, if you want to cross M I, it's helpful to drop the wrist because it pushes the index finger closer to the adjacent string.
No, I've never seen that concept, and I mean, I just generally try not to cross the fingers too much. I mean, if I have to, yeah, you do move the hand, but I mean, I suppose it happens when you do like the sweeping, like if you do the sweeping with crossing I over and then doing it down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not something I've analyzed or thought about. But about the right hand stuff, like for me, that is the basis of all right hand technique is moving from the large joints, um, here rather than further up. And that's actually the first thing I teach all of my new students about right hand is like, preparing the finger on the string, plucking into the palm,
Mm-hmm.
further, like overshooting, going further than you have to, and then relaxing it. And when you relax it, it goes automatically back out. You don't have to push it, right? So that's actually the basis of all right hand playing. And that's why I don't really use rest stroke almost ever. Like, I find that if you use proper force from the larger joints, you don't really need rest stroke most of the time, unless you want that specific sound. But it's not, I think it's less about power than it is about the sound you produce. You know what I mean?
I agree. I like a holistic approach to technique, like everything. For example, like if you start with just assessing your technique based on movement, and we looked at like 3 positions of the wrist here. I don't mean any of the flexion or extension, but just ulnar deviation or radial deviation, and then sort of a neutral position. I was thinking, like, why would you ever have radial deviation? And you just look at lute technique, and it's literally built on it. They have the thumb behind, and you sort of have a pushing motion that you can use. They often plant their pinky to support, which is something that we're
Right.
told to do. And you can certainly include this in your technique. It's a fully usable technique, and it's not like the best technique. There are certainly downsides to it, but it doesn't mean that you can't include that in your sort of bag of tricks. It's going to
Yeah.
give you a different timbre. Same with rest stroke. Like, there's advantages and disadvantages to this drop position. Like, I'll play with I and A almost always in a drop position for alternation. That's what feels most comfortable to me, unless I'm just using these two, and it would be across like
I
MI.
also have to I do the drop position now that I think about it. I didn't think about it consciously, but when I do cross string trills on 2 strings, and I do tremolo fingering, so like A M I P, but you cross I over to the first string. So A on first string, M on second string, I on first string, then P on second string.
And you have a drop wrist for that one?
A little bit because
Yeah.
because the index finger has to cross over the middle finger, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's all about alignment. Like, you just think about, if you're in a straight position, where do your fingers go? Well, they go one string after the next. And
Yeah.
then if you drop the wrist, it puts it on, like, Carlovaro with the left hand talks about this is horizontal alignment and then transverse alignment. And a lot of, like, one thing that that really bothers me about additions of scores is it literally most of the time will just indicate left hand. You're lucky if you get a right hand indication, and then there's no like information most of the time on what that means for your body. So that's another big part of what I'm doing, is trying to create nomenclature that you can actually attach to a score to indicate, this is one route, and one of the downsides to that is that, say someone is playing in a flamenco position, what you might be asking them to do could be, much different than what you're doing. So it's pretty subjective trying to really nail down technique, but I think anatomy is definitely a place to start.
Yeah, I mean, I just try to teach those principles early to my students. Like, no matter what kind of music they're playing, doesn't matter if it's classical guitar or other, even if they're not using a classical position, right? If I have a student who's playing Jimi Hendrix, right, on an electric guitar with a strap and it's not so high up, or it is high up or whatever's like they're comfortable with and works for their technique. I mean, of course, we have to adjust it, but trying to teach the principles of, like, for the left hand being like supinated and pronated, right? The horizontal position. Many electric guitar players don't know how to do the horizontal position at all, and as a result, their third and fourth fingers suffer so much when it comes to slurs and stuff. So a lot of my students who come to me who play electric guitar, before they come to me, I spend a lot of time taking them through classical guitar left hand exercises on an electric guitar to just make them learn that position. And some of them fight at the beginning, but it's like usually pays off in the end for their control of the third and fourth finger. But like a lot of guitarists, I think a lot of guitarists, honestly, even ones who've taken lessons, don't have any of this explained to them. Like, they don't learn to analyze their own hands at all, which is really, like, crazy to me. That their former teachers have never. I mean, I don't want to like talk shit about former, like, other guitar teachers, but there just seems to be a lot of students I get who have had guitar teachers who've never gone into any of that, and it's just like, it's weird, Because
Yeah.
like, your hands and your body are how you produce the sound, and the way you position them affects everything. So it's just odd to me that nobody would address that. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's happening more and more now. I see a lot of people focusing on this, and
Yeah.
I think the whole reason that I've been attracted to this is, I mean, I think it started with Jesse. He's the one that really started making me aware of my hands, and then it just went from there. I've started.
Yeah, I guess I'm speaking as like teaching sort of like, students in the community kind of thing, like not people who want to necessarily have a career in music or something. So I think there's a lot of guitarists out there who don't think about this stuff at all, and it really hampers them, just like people who just play guitar, right? So, of course, not everybody's going to get super deep into it. I don't know if that's the same for other instruments. Maybe it is the same for piano, but I feel like probably for most people who take piano lessons, piano technique is pretty basic. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, piano technique is fascinating. So my body mapping teacher is a piano player, and thinking about the spine is really important. Like, it's actually important in guitar playing too. Like, it seems ridiculous, but you could play a note just with your spine if you positioned everything, and I just let the guitar move.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a part of our technique, and it's something that you could include in your awareness. Not that we should be producing it just with our spine, and that's extreme. But you
spine stroke. Yeah.
You can see how that would involve like just a choreographed type movement. If you really want to show something big is happening, maybe the spine should be involved. It's not necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for, like, I don't know, the whole debate of like whether you move or not when you perform, but I think like having a flexible, fluid body that can move with the music is probably better at some level, until it gets to the point where you're like hampering your technique by moving too much. But yeah, it's probably useful to feel like all of your body is involved in the motion to some extent. Just that larger, again, the principle of larger muscles working and larger, joints working. I think that's valuable.
Yeah, it's cool. It's fascinating. I mean, like you were saying, using the larger joint, and I just watched a technique workshop, which this isn't something that I really conceptualized, but people even go to each joint and in like just with free stroke decide this is going to be your knuckle joint, however you want to describe this, just a motion from there. Especially like one thing that was kind of cool was seeing rasguados just from the mid joint here, and like it's a different trajectory. So if you go mostly from the mid joint, it's a little bit straighter path than if you used all of the joints, and you're going to be using all of the joints.
It's just when I do that, I feel tightness. Like, I don't feel the looseness of the whole arm working. I don't know.
I don't use that technique, but it's interesting to see how people are dealing with the same issues, and there's a whole dynamic system that you could get just from the hand. But once again, you do have to be really careful about what's safe, and I think that's
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Well, for everyone who's joined, I forgot to mention it again, but this episode we're encouraging people to, instead of taking any donations for the artists of the stream, we're encouraging people to donate to oh god, if the name is escaping me for the 1 second. To yes, Campaign Zero. I knew it was something zero. Campaign Zero, who are working to end racially targeted police violence in America, just because of current events and what's going on. We wanted to highlight this organization because they're working to influence policy and also the training and stuff in the police force, just to reduce and hopefully bring to zero police violence. So please check that out. About your compositions, Brandon, you sort of started composing, I think, after we sort of saw each other in Northwest, right? Like that was a more recent development, writing music.
Yeah. I think I've really only taken composition seriously for the last year, since like when I had a period where I wasn't playing guitar, what I immediately went to was composing, and since that point, this is when I've really started studying with people and taking it serious as something that I want to do and continue doing. But I was always creative before that. In the video that I shared with you was before I had really any training, and it's kind of a funny piece that we'll hear. But yeah, it's a new development, but I love composing, so that's why I keep doing it.
Was it because you had an injury and so you felt like you had more time to write, or was there another reason that kind of like pushed you to do it?
Yeah, also like when I moved to Portland, right now I'm actually at home due to the quarantine, and it's a city called Prineville in Central Oregon. When I had grown up, I was always creative. I had a band, and I always wrote music. That was my relationship with music. Was like I thought the idea of playing someone else's music was very strange. I'm like, well, why wouldn't I just write my own music? That's not my music. Why would I do that? So I always had that sort of interaction with music. And then as I got into playing classical guitar, that's when I stopped. And then right at the point to where I couldn't play guitar, I think it was the next day, I started composing. And yeah, I wrote like 3 pieces in a week at that point. It didn't happen after that. Then it was like 3 months of a dry spell.
Yeah.
I think it was just something that was waiting to come out of me. Just something that I had sort of suppressed. It's definitely a character of Brandon, whatever that means. It's something that I like to do. If you leave me alone in a room with a guitar, I'll probably start trying to write something.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Nice. Well, we're going to listen to one of your compositions, but first I'm going to do this classical guitar Would You Rather. So, you know how Would You Rather works, right?
I think so.
Okay. So, Brandon, would you rather go on stage and play an entire concert in your pajamas, or go on stage and play the entire concert super sick, super ill, like you're like coughing and sneezing and everything? I mean, I guess now it's even like it's the worst time to go on stage sick because people like, what have you got? But
pajamas are great. If I could get away with wearing pajamas to performances, that would be fantastic. So.
Nice. Well, but nobody else knows why you're wearing pajamas. You just like are wearing them.
That's even better.
Even better? Nice. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Would you rather play only one composer for an entire year, or only one type of piece, like preludes, sonatas, whatever?
I'd probably go with the second one. I think it's a better survey.
Yeah.
Or wait, did you? Well,
I mean, I guess with the type of piece, you can do like a lot of different stuff. Like if you just play sonatas, there's a lot of options. If you just play variations, there's a ton of options.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's just one composer.
Yeah, I guess that's a bit hard to sell in a concert.
Yeah, yeah. I'll stick with the second one.
Nice. Okay. Would you rather? Okay, so let's say it's like you're in school and you're preparing like a normal exam recital for the end of the year. And let's say like you've sort of like memorized everything, you've learned everything, it's all like good to go. And then it's March, your recital's in like 2 months, and you either have to change half of your exam program, or you have to change all of your fingerings, articulations, and dynamics.
I would just change the program.
Just
That's
change the program. Okay.
You're fighting so much muscle memory and like hard neural development that you put there.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely not.
yeah. That's fair. I can see what you mean. And the like gold question: would you rather have shaky hands or like shitty nails, like bad nails,
Oh,
in a
I hate.
performance?
I hate both of those. I
Yeah, I
mean,
know.
I don't get the shaky hands as much anymore, but that's just it ruins everything.
Yeah,
But if you
it's
have bad nails, it's like impossible. And the more you play with bad nails, the more it destroys your strings. So it just like continually gets worse.
exactly.
Gosh, I guess I will go with shaky hands.
Really, you hate bad nails that much? Okay.
I hate it. Yeah, it's
Wow.
like
I feel like I would pick the bad nails just because like at least you're in control then,
of
um,
your sound.
of your
This
bad.
is
Yeah, I have very good control of this terrible sound. Isaac Engel says I could picture you wearing pajamas in a concert, and I would totally go. Brandon, very
yes.
nice.
Thank you, Isaac. I appreciate it.
Okay, so we're gonna listen to a piece he wrote called it's a fantasy, right?
Yep.
Cool. Anything else you want to say about it?
This is a while ago. I feel like this composition is a 3 minute run-on sentence, but I checked it out this morning, and I still feel like there's a lot of me in that, so it's fun to share. I hope that you enjoy this, and I would love to hear what you think of it.
Cool. Yeah. Well, people can let us know. All right, let's listen to this fantasy. Very cool. Nice.
Just the audience hearing.
Yes, somehow the audio. I mean, I assume everybody else could hear it because no one said anything in the chat, but I couldn't hear it and you couldn't hear it. Normally we can, but I don't know. OBS is doing weird things today. Earlier, the audio just like cut out for no reason, and then now, yeah, whatever. Anyways, I hope the audience could hear the piece because it looked like it was outputting audio, but I don't know.
No response. We just scared them off, probably.
No response, just like empty silence. No one saying anything. Cool. Well, I'm gonna listen to the piece after, so then I can actually comment on it. Oh man, technical difficulties. This is the world we live in now. I mean, you're teaching online, right? A little bit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you know what the Zoom life is like.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, the lack of commute is definitely a benefit, but all of the compiling of teaching materials and the issues with the internet, I mean, that's a whole nother
Yeah.
thing.
It's also just hard when a student has like a bad internet connection. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
It's like you try to give quality education, but like sometimes the connection is just so bad that you're like, well, I can only fix my own internet, and that's the problem.
Do you have shaky hands, or is it just really bad nails?
Yeah, or is it just a really bad connection? Well, actually, I get my students to record themselves beforehand and then send me recordings, and we watch them together, because then at least it's the quality of their cell phone, which may not be great, but it's better than the quality of Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
That's true.
Yeah. Anyhow, I should try and get Zoom to sponsor me, then I won't say bad things about them. I mean, I use Zoom for every single show, so they really should sponsor me. Yeah. So another topic that I want to try addressing a little more on the show is like current events and classical guitar. So what do you think the future of guitar is, and the situation right now in the world as it is? And I don't know, how do you see our role moving forward?
Yeah. I was just reading an article a few days about the value in music and sort of the different ways. I wish I had it up with me because I'm not going to be able to cite all of them. But the idea of art as a communicative action, like sort of interacting with, I mean, just right now with all the stuff that's going on in the United States, it almost feels wrong for me sometimes to share music unless I'm trying to engage with the issues that are very real around me. So just as a musician, I don't know if this is specific to classical guitar, but I think one of the routes is through engaging with social issues. I think that's definitely one route. But like, I suppose, can you ask the question again, and maybe I can address it in a different light?
Well, like, yeah, just sort of given the state of the world right now with, I mean, pandemic, and then also these things going on in the United States and stuff, and then the globalized world we live in, and the way that the entertainment industry has changed, the music industry has changed. How do you see classical music and classical guitar going forward? Like, it's kind of a broad question, I guess, but I feel like the landscape is changing really fast. Like, even when it comes to like making recordings and CDs and stuff, it's just not what it used to be. Like, you don't have a record deal that's going to land you like anything good. It's like you produce the CD yourself at home with the technology that you have available to you, and then put it on iTunes and Spotify. And I don't know, it's just a very different world. So things are changing quickly. What's the future you think for us?
Recording is sort of an odd thing. I mean, I personally love recording, and I listen to audio more than I would ever watch video at this point. The way I interact with music is through that. So for me, I really do want to spend time recording and going after things in that way, but I don't know that it's always it's obviously not as accessible that way, especially with classical guitar. So we have a lot of like Instagram and Facebook. This is a lot of the way that people are seeing classical guitar today, and there's a visual element to it for sure, and that has positive and negative aspects, but you can't ignore that social media, and we can play everything by ourselves, and we have a portable instrument, so it's really sort of fallen into this landscape pretty nicely. You can grab a guitar, set your phone up, play something, share it with all of your friends. There you go. So I mean, like, that's something that's new, and I think it's bringing this music and that type of playing to a lot of people's attention. But monetizing, I don't know, there are a lot of different systems. Like I see people doing Patreon, and I think that's great. You can sort of go after what you are interested in and share the things that you love. And hopefully, if you're working hard and you have something valuable to say, then you'll have a community that backs you, and you get to do sort of what you choose to do. But I mean, there's no shortage of hard work in that model. There are a lot of different models for making a living. I mean, for me, it's mostly education. That's how I pull by and pay rent, is through teaching. And then it gives me the security to choose performances as I want them, or like, I don't have to take performances that I just hate, like a 3-hour gig.
Of music that you're not interested in playing. I mean, you can be a bit more like artistically selective with your projects, right?
Yeah. I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
that's for me personally, but it just depends. I think it's really on an individual basis. Like, what do you have to offer? What are you interested in? And then what model best suits you for that? Like, the composer performer model is different than just a performer. And like some people specialize, like we were talking about, if you wanted to play one composer's music for an entire year. Some people just specialize in things like that. So that's another route, and you just get very good at that. So I think like for me, where it's going, I know the landscape is changing, and I don't fully understand all of it myself, but I still think it comes to some of the fundamental individual questions that you have to ask yourself when you're entering whatever landscape it might be. It's like, what do you have to contribute? What are you interested in? How do you want to help? And then sort of see the landscape in front of you, and then find the best way in to whatever community that you want to serve through those different skills that you have to offer.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a sort of a blend or a hybrid is pretty important for most people. Like, it's really hard to make a living as a classical musician. Period, first of all. It's just hard to do that. But hard to do that with one specialization in a way. But at the same time, we all kind of do have to have some of our things that we really focus on. And then, like you said, when there's like social issues and things that you want to address that are non-musical, but you can address in a musical way, that's a space for projects, right? Like if you have a project focused on a specific thing, or it doesn't have to be a social issue. It could also be like, for example, I did a concert tour with my friend Nathan Bredesen that was all new Canadian music, because we believed really strongly in working with composers and in expanding the repertoire from our region, and showing communities in Canada, specifically Canadian music, especially communities who didn't know anything about classical guitar. It was kind of cool to bring to them like a concert that was, music of composers from their country that are living now, like up and coming young composers. So it's just like, it's kind of a question of priorities, but that kind of project also is very time consuming. I mean, we were lucky to get a grant to cover part of the costs. Still was, hard to pull off in its own way, and a lot of extra work compared to the payoff. So then there's the thing of, how do you pay your rent? I mean, like you said, education is like, teaching is a big thing. It's reliable. The online stuff, like, I feel like it is super convenient now, especially with classical guitar, that we have this portable instrument where we can just record ourselves and put it out there. But there's, like you said, the issue of monetization and the issue of like oversaturation. Like, that's one of the things with this show like you said, it's a bit weird to be putting it out when there's so much like terrible shit going on in the world, it's a bit weird to keep making episodes and stuff, but at the same time, like, I would hope that, like, for example, with this show, I want to do something a little bit different and try to highlight people who have interesting ideas and projects, and hopefully benefit other people that way too, right? So, yeah. But like, it is oversaturated. I think, I don't know, the online space, like, I mean, I do have a Patreon for the show and stuff like that. I think monetizing it is tricky, and I think that still, it might seem old-fashioned, but I think still, like, getting paid to play concerts and teach is the most reliable way to make income, basically. There are online routes, but it's just really, like, it's really hard to make it, like, sustainable, I don't know.
With you, both of the projects, the one that you're doing right now and the one you mentioned with Canadian music, I think the reason that these things work is because you have something that's important to you and it's valuable to the community as well. Like everyone is, for me, it's super interesting. I'm like, I want to hear what Canadian composers are doing right now. That's
Mm-hmm.
really cool. It's like something that has vitality and meaning too. So I think just as long as you have those things, you have something valuable. Gosh, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
it's
into
hard.
the saturation. But
I appreciate it. I mean, I mean, there are other people doing those same things that I'm doing though too. I mean, like, yeah, it's just tricky to know, like, yeah, and with the online space again, it's like you hope that people enjoy what you put out and that it's valuable to people, that it improves their experience, their life somehow, right? But also, yeah, the saturation in this stuff. Yeah, it's just tricky. I think I don't know. I think you have to be good at a lot of different things. Like there's just I don't know of very many musicians who don't have their hands in a bunch of different pots, but also have interesting projects that add value, like you say, like that. Like for you, your research with like body mapping and Alexander technique and injury prevention and stuff, and the fact that you went through that journey yourself means that you're in a better position to share it with others, right? And to impact their lives that way. So of course that's not going to be the only way you make money or you make a living or you make your career happen. Like you said, you're still teaching and stuff, but that's one extra thing you add to your artistic profile that's like adds value to the people you interact with and the communities you're a part of, right? I don't know. Yeah.
I think skills are really what's important, and that's hopefully what higher education is about, is gaining more skills. And the
Mm-hmm.
more that you have, they start complementing each other in ways that you wouldn't have expected. It's like when you're prepared for an opportunity maybe that you didn't even expect. Like I've been working for a music journal the last 3 months and doing editing and transcribing interviews and doing things that I would have never thought that I was doing. And now I have a totally different skill set that I can help to, it will help me communicate better. And there's, what could you possibly lose from learning to communicate better?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think skills are, especially with a changing environment, like learning, going to people that have skills, trying to get those skills and then do something meaningful with it. I think that's a pretty safe model. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
with the saturation and all this other stuff. I'm
Yeah, I mean, it's also a long-term game. There's a lot of people who, start out and don't they burn out and they don't like have some longevity. But I don't know. The skills thing is important. I think to your experiences, right? Like what kind of things have you gone through as an artist that you can share with others? I mean, like again, your injury prevention, your composing was something that came out of an experience for you, like suddenly, right, on the guitar. So that's like an experience you have that's valuable to share with others. Yeah, I mean the problem is you can't predict those things; they just kind of happen in your artistic life, and then you hopefully make use of them, right?
yeah, don't let it tank you. I think that's the main thing, is when you have a problem, don't let it sink you.
Yeah, but I mean not even just problems. I mean everything that happens to us artistically, right, is an experience. Could be a negative one that you then learn from. Could be a positive one that you harness. So I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyhow, it's tricky to navigate, but I mean it's just such a fast changing sphere, like how people
Yeah.
consume music, media, everything. It's yeah, I don't know where the future is, but we'll make it there eventually, somehow. Is there anything else you want to say or give any shout outs to anyone before we play the lightning round and finish?
Um, I'll just say, like, thank you to my teachers. I'll mention a few names that have like specifically helped me. I'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll start with Jesse. Just talking about guitar playing, Jesse McCann has been a really big help. And then
Mm-hmm.
this year specifically, my body mapping instructor Lisa Marsh,
Cool.
who has a wonderful book on piano playing that I think, coordinate movement for pianists. It's on Amazon. That's a really cool thing to check out. Even if you're a guitarist, there's a lot of wonderful information there. So Lisa Marsh, and then my guitar instructor Cameron O'Connor. He's a wonderful guitarist. Just search him on YouTube. I'm sure you can find some beautiful recordings. So
Cool.
yeah, thanks to everyone who has supported me. I appreciate all
Awesome.
that. Yep, the community has done for me.
Cool. Awesome. And just for everyone, again, just check in the description for the charity that we're trying to promote through the stream, Campaign Zero, to work to end police violence, racially targeted police violence in America. Um, yeah, take a look at that. They have like some cool work going on, and it's a good thing to support if you're like, want to make a change in the current events. I'm gonna do the lightning round with you, Brandon, and then we will sign off. So for lightning round, I give you two options, and you gotta pick one real fast. We learn a little bit about your personality this way. Okay.
Okay.
You ready? Cats or dogs?
Cats.
Nice. Bogdanovich or Brower?
Bogdanovich.
East or West Coast?
Oh, East, actually.
East? What? What?
No, West. I take it back.
You're on the West Coast. What do you like about the East Coast? Like, why would you pick East Coast?
I literally haven't been to the East Coast. I just, I haven't moved.
You just hate the West Coast, is what you're saying.
I love the West Coast in some ways. I just need to get out.
You just been there too long. Okay, you're just feeling a little West Coast, best coast. I miss the West Coast now that I've been gone for a while. When I came to the Netherlands, I was like, oh, a change of pace, finally, But now I'm like, I miss it. I mean, I still love living here, but yeah. Anyhow, Scarlatti or Bach?
Ooh, I can't even do it fast because I love both of them so much. What wants to come out is Scarlatti just because I've been fascinated with Scarlatti lately, but
You should do Scarlatti then. There you go.
All right, I'm gonna say Scarlatti.
Vanilla or chocolate?
Vanilla.
Solo or chamber?
Ooh. This is not lightning. What's happening right now? I'm gonna say.
Yeah,
chamber.
I know you're not good at this lightning round. Chamber, okay. Mammals or reptiles?
Mammals.
Okay. Pizza or pasta?
Pasta.
Liszt or Chopin?
Chopin.
Free stroke or rest stroke?
Rest stroke.
What? Come on, man. We just had this conversation about free stroke. Coffee or tea?
Coffee. I love both.
I love both. Oh, wow. Okay. You're really bad at this. Schubert or Beethoven?
Beethoven.
Oh, wow. Okay. Breakfast or dinner?
Dinner.
Contemporary or classical romantic guitar repertoire?
Contemporary.
That's an easy one for you. Campanella or regular scales?
Regular.
Okay. Soar or Giuliani?
Soar.
Sweet or salty?
Sweet.
Tremolo or scales?
Scales.
Horowitz or Rubinstein?
I'm not familiar enough with either to make a conclusive decision.
Okay. Rubinstein. Rodrigo or Tedesco?
Tedesco.
Concert or masterclass? If you're giving it.
Oh. Concert.
Okay. Restoration of the composer's intention or personal interpretation?
Personal interpretation.
Wow. This is the composer speaking. Okay. Bream or Segovia?
Bream.
And mountains or beaches?
Mountains.
Okay. Nice. Awesome. Anyone have any final questions for Brandon? Let us know. You're going to put some stuff in the chat, right? You're going to put this Google Drive with these like resources on body mapping or something?
Yeah, I'll toss up some files. I'll just make a drive link.
Okay, nice. Adam Chickality says the lightning round was my favorite part of the interview for me. That's right, Adam. You were good at the lightning round. It was fun. I don't remember what did I make you choose between? I can't remember. I had some like spicy choices in there, I think, for Adam. That was fun. Also, Adam, I'm a little like insulted that the lightning round was the most interesting part for you because I thought that I made the rest of your interview interesting when I like came up with questions for you specifically. Nobody appreciates the thought I put into the show planning. Which is actually
you inflated my score with the listening. So
yeah, exactly. That's how it goes. Cool. Nice. Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you for joining. And I guess I should announce... Oh, I need to give a quick thank you to my patrons, speaking of Patreon. So a big thank you to Mitchell Kotansky and also to Michelle Wilfang Oliphant. Thank you both for your support. It's really, really appreciated since I put a lot of time and effort into the show. And coming up... Who do I have coming up? I should know this off the top of my head, but I have to look at my list every time to make sure I don't get it wrong. Some people change dates in June, so I'm just like, trying not to get the dates messed up. So next week is Renaud, who's a great composer and guitarist, also actually from from Quebec. So check him out. And then on the Friday it was going to be Elka Prince here, but instead it's going to be Stephen and Philippe. Stephen Dentom is a Dutch luthier, actually, and Philippe Alilovic, is Croatian guitarist and composer, also a guitarist composer. So 2 guitarist composers next week, and he's playing one of Steven's guitars. So they're going to call in together. Steven's going to give some demonstrations about building guitars and stuff, and then Philippe is going to play some of his music on Steven's guitar. So it's going to be kind of a cool, like, hybrid show, luthier and composer guitarist. It'll be really fun. Jaime Marquez Diaz Canedo says, thank you both, and congratulations, Brandon.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys on